Welcome to the Old Man of Three with JJ Redick and Tommy Alter, brought to you by 342 Productions. This is episode 187. Tim Legler and Richard Jefferson. And of course, I put Tim Legler first on that because I would never put Richard Jefferson first. There's no way in hell I would ever do that. Actually, still bummed out that I had to have him on the podcast this week. And apparently I have to work with him like 25 or 30 times on ESPN this year. It's brutal.
It's not a buddy cop because it's three. What do you call it? It's like a buddy. It's like a trio cop comedy.
Oh, the three of us?
Yeah. It's the odd throuple.
Yeah. You know, it's tough. It's the toughest part of my job is working
Having
with
to
Richard
deal
Jefferson.
with him. You can file a workplace complaint.
I'm only kidding, of course. There's all this banter, and we talk about this on the start of the show with RJ, this banter online that him and I don't like each other. I happen to not like him, but also simultaneously love him dearly. So
That's how it goes.
It's a great
sometimes.
relationship. It's a very healthy working relationship. Legs and I and RJ, we recorded this last week, and we knew we were going to evergreen this episode. We happened to have Legler in town. He was doing some studio stuff at ESPN, and RJ also happened to be in town. He was calling some Nets games. Why not talk some big picture basketball stuff? We covered a ton in this episode. Honestly, I think it's about an hour and a half of conversation. I probably could have gone another hour and a half with these two. Just a wealth of knowledge, insight, humor. I always appreciate Legs and how he looks at the game and looks at different trends in the NBA. So it's a great episode. We're going to get into that in a second. Before we do that, DraftKings Sportsbook segment. I want to do a rookie check-in here. We've got, roughly 13 to 15 games now into the season, and a lot of exciting stuff from the rookies. I don't know. For me, the guy that stood out the most is definitely Chet Holmgren.
Yep. 10-4.
10-4.
5 in a row. Number 3 net rating in the NBA, Thunder. I saw the stat over the weekend about Chet and then also about Wemby. The only players in the NBA with 200-plus points, 100-plus rebounds, 25-plus blocks, and 20-plus threes are these two.
Yeah.
Which is, when people are like, this is the future, like the future is here.
Yeah, Tommy, not surprisingly, these two guys have the best odds currently on DraftKings Sportsbook. Wembanyama at -230, Chet at +175. I think about, with all these awards, how much team success plays into it. And to me, it's like Chet seems like the front runner to me because of the impact on winning. In fact, we have our first round of EPM stats, estimated plus minus, that came out over the weekend. And there are 9 players that are in the 85th percentile on both offensive and defensive EPM. Some names in there that aren't surprising: Joel Embiid, LeBron, Shea, Jason Tatum, Paul George, Scotty Barnes, Karl Anthony Towns, Kawhi, Derek White. The only rookie in there, Chet Holmgren. And they won 6 in a row. They're 10-4. They look incredible.
Yeah.
And of course, we're recording this on Monday. The game the other night against the Golden State Warriors, Chet was amazing. Obviously hit the game-winning shot or the game-tying shot to send it to OT. I've been so impressed with his feel, his fit. He makes that offense function so much better because of his ability to space, drive closeouts, move without the basketball, move the basketball, play two-man action with Shea, play a little bit with Jalen Williams. I've just been really impressed with him. And defensively, despite the frame, his positioning has been great, uses his length well, communicates just. It's funny. I watching him Saturday night, I'm like, I thought of Blake and I thought of Ben Simmons. And like the advantage, I know all three of those guys hurt their rookie years, had to sit out the rookie year. But the advantage is being around the NBA for a year and training and coming into your second season, your rookie year, but your second season in the league, a little bit older, a little bit wiser. There's a benefit to that.
Also, don't you think this specific team, being around those guys, they're all in a sort of similar place in life, kind of coming up together. Are you starting to, I know it's really early, and, we've hyped up the future of the Thunder, constantly over the last year and a half. Are you starting to adjust expectations for the Thunder this year?
Oh, man. You know, it's interesting because in a way I am. I go back to something Nakai said when I asked about what he thought their ceiling was in terms of the regular season specifically. And he said, I think their ceiling is they end up with home court advantage, a top 4 seed in the West. I don't think that's out of the question.
Yeah.
And there's a number of good teams and obviously some teams that aren't whole or haven't played well or have added pieces in season like the Clippers. But there seems to be with this team in particular, like a real identity in terms of how they play offensively, getting into the paint, just attacking, drive and kick, which creates open looks. They don't shoot a high volume of 3-point shots, but they're number 1 in the league right now in 3-point percentage. Shout out to Lou Dort. Shout out to Isaiah Joe. Chet shooting 46% as well. So despite having, I would say on paper, like a real lack of like, oh, we have all these. Now Isaiah Joe is for sure, but all these knockdown shooters because of how their offense functions and their ability to get into the paint. Josh Giddey as well, get into the paint and then kick out and then get into the paint again and then kick out. The types of threes they take are all high quality. And so they're shooting the basketball. And then Chet, I think defensively has added a layer in terms of rim protection that they didn't have. Top 10 in the league as of today in both offense and defense. Number 7 offense, number 6 defense. This is a real basketball team. A really good basketball team.
Yeah, it's interesting watching last night. J-Dub didn't play, and so they were a little different. They were emphasizing Wallace a little bit more, but it does feel like they can throw a lot of different looks at you in a way that they weren't doing even last year.
100%. And Cason Wallace, another rookie that we should shout out that's doing some amazing things on that team. Primarily playing off of other people, but he shot the ball extremely well. He's not going to, in terms of a rookie of the year type season, he's not going to necessarily have a high volume just because of that roster and the nature of Giddey and Jalen Williams and Shea having the ball in their hands a lot. But he's fit in really well. He's heady. Like I love what I've seen from Cason Wallace. Couple of the rookies that have really stood out. Asar Thompson, obviously averaging a double-double. However, the Detroit Pistons stink.
Yep.
They've lost 11 in a row. They're now 2-12. He's got the third best odds. Brandon Miller and Scoot Henderson, 2 top 3 picks. A little up and down with Brandon Miller, but starting to see some flashes, particularly in the pick and roll. And just shooting out of the mid-range. He's got positional size at the 2-guard position. Really like him. Scoot's been injured. And then you have a bunch of guys in the rotation for good basketball teams, like Derek Lively, like Jordan Hawkins, like Jaime Jaquez Jr. Marcus Sasser, again, bad team, but he's had a really good stretch of games. Anthony Black getting minutes for the Orlando Magic. Overall, just a good rookie class. I called the Utah game on Friday. Keontae George.
I was going to ask about George.
I'm impressed. And look, I want to say this. Like, I don't get reactionary to shooting percentages as a young player, because I think you have to figure out your shots in the NBA. And a lot of times it's trial and error. And we spent some time with Will Hardy before the game on Friday. And, he talked about the move to put Keontae George in the starting lineup over Colin Sexton or over Talen Horton-Tucker. And he said, look, he's the best passer on our team. He's getting Jordan Clarkson open shots. He's getting Lauri Markkanen open shot. That certainly played into it. But the other part that played into it is we see his talent. We see what his potential could be. We are doing a disservice to him if we're not giving him the opportunity to go out there and make mistakes. And that's really, I think, one of the biggest challenges of coaching in the NBA in general is trying to find that balance between we want to win and we want to give our young guys experience, but like, how much are you willing to live with?
Yeah.
But he made some, look, he had a nice stretch, made some threes, had a one-on-one move, tough banker off the glass, took a heat check. But RJ said something on the broadcast that really stood out. He's like, his hands defensive. He's got strong hands. There's a scrum. he ended up with the ball 3 or 4 times. You know, there's the ball's around him, and he's in the help position or on the ball. He's tipping the ball away. Like, I think potentially there's some two-way impact there long term at that position for him.
Yeah, he's averaging 8.8 assists since getting into the starting lineup. It feels like they may be a little bit of, like we're talking about the Thunder, to your point just now, about like letting them grow together.
Yeah.
And even seeing where they are 5 months from now. The other guy I wanted to bring up on a very bad team, but we've talked about a bunch, is Bilal. And you know, he's not going to be in the conversation for Rookie of the Year, but have you seen things from him, just to give Wizards fans a little bit of hope, because there's not a lot else to sort of talk about nicely right now. So like, what have you seen from him that is positive?
Yeah, when we were prepping for the draft and I was going through the scouting reports on him, when I was going through his profile, when I was watching film, like, the thing that stood out to me was this sort of rapid development. And part of that development to me at the time was the feel for the game, the feel of playing in pick and roll, the feel of playing off the ball and making cuts. You know, I didn't watch a ton of them early. I watched, I think, their 4th or 5th game whenever they played the Celtics. I watched that game early. I've seen him play 2 or 3 times now in the last 2 weeks. And I like that part of it, just the feel. So, you know, in terms of positional size and length, like he's got all of that. And to me, if he's going to be like all-star, all-NBA, right? That's what they're drafting him as with the 6th pick. It really becomes about that feel, because physically he has all the things you would want. He shot the ball really well lately. I'm very excited for him. If there is optimism,
Yeah, that's it.
if you're a Wizards fan,
That's it.
it's with Koulibaly. It's with Koulibaly. Sorry, guys. Yeah, lots of fun stuff. We'll be, you know, monitoring these rookies all throughout the season. There's been some guys that just haven't got a ton of tick. There's been some guys that, you know, have been injured. But overall, I've been really impressed with this rookie class, and in particular, you know, the guys that I mentioned that are having an impact on winning. This has been our DraftKings Sportsbook segment. Get in on the NBA action. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code JJ. New customers can get $150 instantly in bonus bets for betting just $5 on basketball. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code JJ. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, Kansas. 21 and over age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See sportsbook.draftkings.com/basketball terms for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources. Let's get into it with 2 legends of broadcasting. I don't know about basketball players, but 2 legends of broadcasting, Tim Legler and Richard Jefferson. Going into Friday's game, I told RJ, saying, RJ, people have real question marks about our relationship. I think during Friday's game, Brooklyn at Boston, I think our bit should be that we're overly nice to each other and complimentary, so we can sort of squash this narrative that exists that we don't like each other.
But that's the thing, is I don't think it's a false narrative. I don't think this is something that I think people can pick up on energies amongst 2 people, right? Like sometimes you can look at 2 people like, oh, they like each other. Oh, you see those 2 flirting over there? And it's like, oh, I didn't see it. It's like, no, there's an energy. So for people to pick up on the energy that we don't like each other, I think it's accurate. I'm actually impressed with that America figured it out as quickly as they did. It was like, man, it only took them a couple of games. We hit it very well all last season. All last season, everyone's like, man, this would be a great pairing. I think professionally, I think we don't mind each other, but like personally, yeah. I think that just comes through, you know, the way we look and talk to each other.
Tim, it's not true.
Married couple thing, man. The longer you work together, then the more things you're going to have that you don't like about each other. It's fine. It's okay.
Well, and I've been very clear my entire like professional career on the basketball side and then on the broadcasting side. Like I can't stand anyone or anything associated with Duke. This is well documented. This is well documented. You know, me and Jay Will used to go at it. You know my feelings. So it's not like, I guess maybe your fans, if that's what you call them, the people that follow you are probably new to this, but everyone that knows me is like, oh yeah, I can see why you couldn't stand JJ.
That's a false narrative. So I texted you both some potential topics for this podcast, and about 10 days ago, as I for every podcast I do, I have an upcoming guest has a name as their own note in my phone, and as I sort of throughout the week think of topics to talk about, I write it down. And I'm watching Legs on SVP the other night, and it says Tim Legler, 11-year NBA veteran, led the league in three-point shooting in 95, 96. And I was like, man, I feel like, I don't know, this is your 20th year, whatever year it is, 25th year? 23rd year.
In broadcasting, yeah.
I'm like, every single Chiron that I've ever seen, which is just the lower third, when they show him on TV, has said that exact thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I texted you both. I'm like, what do you want for your Chiron?
Mm-hmm.
Like, idea. I was thinking more like ideally, and you both texted me back what you actually want on your Chiron
professionals
for this show, though. We're not making a Chiron.
We're literal guys.
We're professionals. Like you tell me something literal, and I take it as literal. You told me come to your house at 5:30. You told me come to your house at 5 or 2:30, whatever time it is. You tell me 2:30. At 2:29, I'm calling you at your front door, and you're like, what? And you're like, oh, just come through the downstairs. I'm like, JJ. Like, look, I look a little different, bro. Like, I'm not just walking into someone's house, right? I was like, I was not given those instructions. If he would have given me those instructions,
I walked right in.
And rightfully so. If I was you, I would walk in. But you tell me that, and he was like, oh, just come in the bottom stairs. And I'm like, well, I wasn't given those instructions. Now, if you would have texted me 2:30, my place, come in the bottom, I'd have been right there.
What I meant by the question was, what would you want in an ideal world? And obviously RJ, I think, got the vibe because he wrote back to me, started first athlete podcast road tripping, which is not true, and scored 2,876 more points than JJ.
Yes.
That's funny. Tim wrote back like,
I listen, like I took the question literally. Like, you know, I'm like, first of all, I can honestly say it's the first time I've ever even contemplated that question because it doesn't matter to me. I don't really notice it. You don't
think about it.
No, hopefully you're not staring at like what's written below my name or just hopefully you're listening to what I'm saying. So I've never even considered. So actually, when I saw the word, I was like, what's he asking me for right here, right now?
Well, I knew what he was asking for, and I wanted to make sure that is very clear what I had on that. If I have to type and do a little bit of a Google search and open my calculator, so I have now opened up 2 different apps to give an answer, best believe I want results. So whenever you do have a Chiron, whenever it does, that's what I wanted to say.
All right. Okay. Fair enough. Well, Legs now is part of the 342 network. He's a regular on the Old Man of the Three Things.
Let's go.
He's a regular on this. Maybe someday you will be part of the 342 family.
The problem is with all due respect, working for you doesn't sound like something that I would ever have a desire to.
Nobody works for me. We work together.
Yeah. Look, I decide who works for who by who gets the lion's share.
Yeah.
Right? That's what I do. And rightfully so. What you have done with 342, I think is needed in this space. And I'm excited for you. But yeah.
All right. We have a lot to get into regarding the NBA and real stuff. I actually want to start with the Clippers. And I was not surprised when the James Harden trade was made that all over social media was the 4 big names on their team: Westbrook, Harden, Paul George, Kawhi, a picture of them, and the scary hours meme. And I would like to formally request that we retire any of the scary hours memes. Can we please do that? Both of you guys played in the NBA a long time. I played in the NBA a long time. Was there ever fear from a player to another player? Did you feel that? Did you know teammates that felt like? I can honestly say I was never scared of an opponent.
Never had that emotion and I never really witnessed it. At the closest ever, and it wasn't directed at me, it was a different position, that I saw where maybe guys were a little bit more nervous lacing up.
I think we're going to say who?
Was Shaq. Because Shaq wouldn't just, go out there and outplay and dominate you statistically, like whatever. He also could potentially put you on some sort of video clip that could last a lifetime, right? So
Chris Dudley.
Right. And and by the way, Shaq, second year in the league, maybe he's in Orlando. I'm in Dallas. That was the leaner Shaq, but picks up a loose ball in the middle of the lane. I'm the closest guy to him. And even then it was, don't let this guy get layups and dunks, chop him. He starts to rise up, and I just swung down as hard as I could across both forearms, and he kept going like full strength, and I'm feeling kind of like my body starting to go upward, like in an upward motion, like where you're thinking like he's about to take me off the ground, and you release and let go. So that's the closest I saw, like in the locker room, the dudes that had to deal with him, maybe a little bit more nervous that night, but no. And I played against a lot of Hall of Famers in my spot. I never felt fear, like, more of an adrenaline excitement actually to play against those guys than anything.
Okay, so we can go back even further than basketball, right? I mean, further than the NBA. We were all those dudes in high school, right? You got to be those dudes to get to those places in college. And for the most part, you got to be those dudes in college to get to that. I can't even really remember in high school when I'm in Glendale, Arizona, and the starting center on the other side is a 6'4" dude, that also is like working at Radio Shack during the summer, right? Those guys never looked at me with fear, right? Like, no, like that's what I'm saying. So it's like Shaq is the one guy because he was you're looking at him like the fear that you might get is he's doing that full speed thing. Am I really going to try and take a charge on this?
Right.
Like this could change the direction of my career. But fear, like guarding someone that is the same size, same position, same skill. No. I have never seen fear in someone's eyes. Respect, confusion when someone does something like holy, like the look that what's his name when Wembanyama when he dunked
on Thomas Bryant.
Thomas Bryant, like that's not fear. That's not a fear look. That was like, what the what the heck? Like, you don't know what that is. So and I know what the point you're trying to make, but I've never seen actual fear. That is something that I've never seen in someone's eyes.
You hear it all the time, though. I think you hear it in the media and you hear it from fans. This team is going to be scary. I just think it's the wrong word. I think fear is the wrong word. And Stephen A. talks all the time like Jordan was feared and LeBron is not feared. I tend to disagree with that. I think the physical part, like I said this, I think it was last year or the year before to Stephen A. I said, look, there was a time on fast break, I knew LeBron was going to go to that left to right spin move and I timed it perfectly. And there was a split second there where I was like, this is going to fucking hurt. And like that part of it was scary, but like going up against an opponent or a team, even those Warriors teams with KD, like we knew they had to play their worst and we had to play our best to have a chance. Mm-hmm. But there was no fear.
Well, for me, respect. Even, defending Michael Jordan, like it wasn't a situation where you're afraid of it. For me, I always looked at situations like that as this is a no-lose situation for me. There's nothing he can do to me he hasn't done to much better players, right? So I'm going to compete. And if you go through a 4 or 5 minute stretch where you guard him pretty well and you contest a couple shots and he misses, you did your job. Guy like me, I'm worried about like that other role player shooter on the other team. If that guy tunes you up like for a 5 minute stretch right now, you're more worried about that by far than guarding guys like Drexler or Reggie Miller or Jordan, because you're just like, I see him do it every night to everybody. I look at this as an opportunity and a challenge more than anything.
Right. The James Harden comments, I'm not a system player. I am a system. Out of context, maybe looks bad. Given the full quote, doesn't really look that bad to me. But there was a certain reaction to that. I wanted to get your personal reaction to it, and then I want to sort of provide some context of it.
Well, first, I've been about as vocal as anybody. I've been hard on him.
You've been very hard. You've been very anti-Harden.
And it hasn't changed. Okay? It hasn't changed.
I can't believe you had any ammo over the last few years.
But ironically, I'll say this. And I remember I was traveling somewhere when he made those comments. And I got texts coming into my phone about it and laughing. Can you believe he said that? Oh my God. And I said, actually, it's 100% accurate. It's accurate. He is the system because especially up to this point in his career, anywhere he's gone, right? You're assimilating to his style. And that's really how I would interpret that. You're going to assimilate to how I want to play. And that certainly was the case in Houston, Brooklyn, everywhere. Now, he's more of a facilitator in Brooklyn and Philly. I get it. But it was still about a style of play and how I want to operate, right? And very little done off the ball. It's going to be on ball, high ball screen, ISOs, step back threes, get downhill. It's all predicated on his skill set. And everything around it has to now kind of, acclimate to that. So I took that as an honest statement and actually completely true. It doesn't necessarily mean I think that's a good thing, that's going to work or win, but I think he's being honest about it.
I think I 100% agree with you, because it's like, you look at generally the pace in which he plays. It's very consistent, right? He always stays within a space of like, this is the pace in which he plays. He's a ball handler. He will use all of the shot clock. Some of it is, when he was getting 60-point triple-doubles, 50-point triple-doubles, he was doing a little bit of everything. He's going to score the bulk of the points. He's going to do this. So in his brain, he is the system. I respect that. Now, the context of which he's saying on top of the kind of failed last few situations, I think that's what people got. So, you're a system. Well, what happened in Brooklyn? Well, they had the number 1 rated offense like we'd ever seen. If it wasn't for a hamstring and a toe, they might have won an NBA championship. Well, you're the system. What happened in Philly? It's like, he led the league in assists and Joel Embiid won the MVP. So it's like, when you start breaking this down, it's like, what happened in Houston? Yes. Did they win the championship? No, they didn't win the championship.
They were also the only team outside of LeBron that was going for a championship, that really had a legit chance to beat that team.
Yeah, there was Golden State, them, and LeBron. That was it. Nobody else even wanted to spend money or start going into the luxury tax to even compete against the juggernaut. So to me, he was 100% accurate. It was just more of the timing of which he is saying and the people that are not happy with him the last few years.
I think that's the biggest part of it. I think there's a stretch of time in the NBA, and whether it's through the media, whether it's through social media, where it's just the cool thing to rip on a certain player over and over again. When I saw the comment, I was like, he's right. And I would probably say that about a number of players, right? Jokic is a system. Steph Curry is a system. There's subsystems.
Luka.
Luka's a system.
Bron.
There's subsystems to this. Think about, you're the second or third guy offensive option on your team, and you get to run with the second unit at the start of the second quarter. Guess what? You're the system for those 6 minutes. My off-ball movement in LA was a system for the first 6 minutes of every game and the first 6 minutes of every third quarter. We played through me. I was the system for that time period. Was I the system on the Clippers? No, I fucking wasn't the system on the Clippers. I know that.
Subsystem.
Yeah. TJ McConnell coming in the game at the beginning of the second quarter, all of a sudden the pace changes. He's picking up full court. Like, that's a system in itself. It's a subsystem. Don't get me wrong, but it's a subsystem. The reaction to it, to me, was just out of pocket. Like, it was just out of this anti-James Harden hatred. Now, has he done anything since he went to the Clippers to help himself? No. He's probably done a number of things. I wish we could have James on to have this conversation
one day.
And this is not me ripping on the Brooklyn Nets. It's not me ripping on the Houston Rockets. It's not me ripping on the Philadelphia 76ers. But if you look at each of the departures for him asking out, there was a valid reason. James probably should have signed his max extension in Brooklyn.
Facts.
He should have done that.
Yeah.
But there was a reason, right? The Rockets were not going to win. He recognized that. He wanted to get to a place where he could win. Brooklyn seemed, from the outside, to be a little toxic. This disagreement he had with Morey, it seemed to be a really divisive point that neither side was going to recover from. This happens in pro sports. It happened to James Harden 3 straight stops. I'm not justifying it.
Yeah.
But they're legitimate reasons that we see in sports all the time.
Well, let's go back to it. After a bunch of different things like Houston, and again, people are like, oh, you went and got the player. It's like, no. When you have a player to the level of James Harden's greatness, you're on the clock. You saw what Milwaukee did. multiple times. We're going and getting Drew Holiday, and that helped the clock. Then they went and got Dame Lillard. That helped their clock. That whole thing is predicated on Giannis and keeping Giannis happy. They want a different coach. They're going to get that. If Giannis were to leave, don't be like, well, they got you the players when they wanted. And they got you the coach. It's like, no. This is the way the system works, and this is the player league. So when they were going to rebuild, he was like, I don't want to be a part of a rebuild. I'm 30 years old. I need my window. He's been proven to be one of the 5-7 best players for 5 or 6 years. This is not what I want to do. So then he goes to Brooklyn. Not to anybody's fault. You had the vaccine situation. You had multiple injuries. The Kyrie situation was a big thing. And so when you have that situation, he was like, well, I don't necessarily want to sign the extension, right? And then they don't want to give Kyrie the extension. Or they want to have some stipulations in Kyrie's extension. Kevin Durant's the only one that signed his name on the dotted line. I wonder if he was a little surprised about that. I've never asked him. I don't know. But would he have signed his name on that dotted line if he would have known that there was going to be stipulations in the Kyrie contract if James Harden was going to wait till the end of the season? So if you look at that situation, you're like, okay, that's a little muddled right there. And then you move on to Philly. And when people don't talk about James taking a tremendous amount of less money to help their team, which probably helped Joel win the MVP.
James does.
No, James does, but I'm saying people don't talk about it. It's like, wait, he took a tremendous amount of less money that year so that they could build the team. Some of those things come with guarantees and like, hey, when we're in this spot, then we'll take care of you. That's what some people think the lying is about. But that man took quite a bit less money, and we know how it ended.
And look, I think, again, I'm not going to speak for other people involved, but I will just say, again, from the outside, as an observer, there were coaching changes. There were disagreements with certain coaches. There was a bunch of relationships that got, I don't want to say shattered, but a bunch of relationships that got torn a little bit. And so when I speak of the toxicity, I don't just mean Kyrie. Like I'm not just talking about that. Like that whole situation was what it was. We've talked about it. The organization in the NBA, it goes beyond just the players, right? It's across the board where I think things probably could have been handled differently in Brooklyn. Things probably could have been handled differently in Philly from James's perspective. And he felt like he wanted out.
Sitting here as a guy that's never hesitated to criticize him or doubt him, ironically, I've never actually had an issue with all of the things we're talking about now. Wanting out of places, wanting to move, the circumstances that led to that. First of all, that kind of era where like we would question that, like it was just some anomaly, a guy wants out. That happens all the time now. So we're used to dealing with it in this industry. I never really criticized him for those things. For me, the thing that was always the head scratcher for me was him sort of acting as if what I just watched as an analyst, okay, I didn't see.
As a basketball
player, meaning this, and here's how I've just come to describe him. As a superstar talent, which he clearly is, and as we just described, a system unto himself, his floor as a superstar player is lower than any others. Meaning on the nights he goes into the dark places, you can't overcome it because he's got the ball the whole time. He seems like you kind of know it by the end of the first quarter because he doesn't like flip the switch later, which a lot of great players can have those nights where they go 1 through 13 and then bang out 12 points in the fourth when you have to have it. His history, mostly, honestly, by the way, also that's his Houston, a number of occasions, and then Philly over 2 years, a number of those in the postseason. His floor being so low that it gave your team no chance tonight because you're so far removed from what you are at your best and you have the ball all the time. How are we supposed to overcome that as a team? So I've always thought that criticism, when I would see that on those nights, was completely valid. But like his persona and getting asked about that was if like, no, that's not what happened at all. You didn't see that. That's not what happened. I was exactly myself tonight. And that's where my main criticism has come. It hasn't been about the business decisions or wanting out or whatever, or moving on to another place. It's been basketball related, and don't tell me, not to believe my lying eyes.
You're relying on the system, and when the system is failing, the team fails.
Yeah,
exactly.
There you go.
Well, the other thing about this, and when we're talking about James Harden being kind of unfairly criticized, well, there's a lot of things that go into that James Harden gumbo. There's a lot of things. So you can talk about, his floor as a player, which if you are a basketball mind, if you follow basketball, you have seen some next level stuff that takes like, hey, we need to understand this better. The not shooting the ball in the first quarter against the Kawhi-less Spurs, right? Like those are moments in time where you're like, what is going on here,
Right.
James? Like you're a top 5 player in the world, a top 3 player in the world, and you're not even being aggressive. Then there's the off the court stuff. And I know we don't talk about this, but it's the partying, it's the well-knownness, it's the being seen. Like I've seen players.
We all partied.
We all partied. No.
We all
I'm not
partied.
questioning that, bro. But I have seen players literally in tears when they had a chance to win a championship and have it crumble. Where I've seen players win a championship and cry. The only thing I'm saying about James is that when you have a historic bad night or this, he is like, it seems to the naked eye that people that watch and see the things on social media, it seems like he's almost unbothered by it.
Not sleeping. I mean, he's not going to lose sleep that
He's
night.
not going to lose sleep over it. When we talk about taking a trip, and he was in Vegas and there was a bit of an altercation in the postseason this year. It wasn't an altercation, but it was like there was something caught on camera where there was an argument, right? Nothing bad. Nothing. Who cares about it? But it was the fact that you were seen there doing that in between. Was it in between round 1 and round 2? I think it was. Was there in between? Yeah, it was in between round 1 and round 2, I believe. Now, a lot of players do this. I am not saying that. And then he goes and has 45 or something in game 1. So it's like all of that noise goes away. But that noise is simmering. That noise is simmering because they believe at some point in time, James Harden is going to have one of those floors. And then people are going to point to, you're not the system. Look at you out partying. Look at all these different things. That's where James sometimes gets an unfair hit because all players do, but it's a hit.
He doesn't help himself.
Does not help himself
But
consistently.
I want to be clear. This is coming from me because I think we, and I'll include myself in this sometimes, I think we, as outside observers of some teams and players, and obviously we all have relationships around the league, we know certain situations. We don't know a lot of certain situations. I think we are guilty at times of a perception of what we observe. So the unbothered comment, I would say I don't know.
I don't know either.
Is he unbothered?
I said
Yeah,
seems.
right. I don't know. I haven't talked to James about that.
Agreed.
I wasn't around him in the locker room after the game, game 7 last year against Boston. I'm not gonna. I can't co-sign that. Is all I'm going to say. I just want to be clear on that. Where did the Clippers go from here? Where do the Clippers go from here?
They're fine. They're fine. I think the Clippers are fine. You asked me, what did you say? I asked you, I'm like, what's a large enough sample size? Because we were talking about something different. We were talking about something different. And it was a different team. It was a different situation. But I'm like, what's a large enough sample size? And you were like, 20 games. And I was like, okay. I thought you were going to say like 5 to 10. You have and you were like 20 games. And if we're going to keep that 20 games as a good sample size to understand. Now, coaches are doing their mixing and changing their lineups and who's going to start. Warriors are dealing with some different people. But isn't that, so if we're going to say, look, they're off to a shitty start. Guys aren't playing great. James Harden looks like he hasn't played basketball in a while, right? I believe he'll be better. I think he'll get that. But it looks like he hasn't played basketball. Games moving fast. But I think we need 20 games before we can say this is bad or this. But they're off to a shitty start.
If you had asked me that same question, I probably would have said 2025 also. I just think that's just fair. Like that's the amount you need, right? And so ultimately, here's why I think they're going to be okay. I'm not going to sit here right now and say, based on what we've seen, this is going to be an epic disaster. I'm not ready to go there because they're the talent we're talking about. Here's where I think he's going to benefit specifically. Situation in Philadelphia, and some of these things I'm calling him out on, his play, the ball was in his hands. You can't run that stuff through Joel all the time, like in important moments, because he's a center. And he's not a center like Jokic that's going to beat you if he has to for 5 straight minutes with his passing. Like, Joel's not going to do that. It's very difficult for a big to be the guy. You need a guy that's facing the basket with a live handle that can get places on the court, right? He's playing with guys that can do that. The ball is going to be in their hands mostly. And that, I think, is going to be a great benefit to him. There's going to be plenty of nights Kawhi doesn't play, plenty of nights Paul George doesn't play, or they're in limited minutes, whatever. And you got this other dude that can go on a regular season night, can go carry you offensively, and you can run everything through him, and he's going to be great once he gets his legs under him. There's no doubt he's going to have great statistical nights, but he's not going to have that burden whenever we get to the postseason, assuming they're in it and they're, we're now looking at them whole and they're actually playing well. He won't have that burden. Carry this thing across the finish line or make every great decision we need you to make. And I think that's going to benefit him tremendously. And that's why I'm kind of reserving judgment ultimately on what that is going to be and what their ceiling is as a group. I'm certainly not ready to, look, This is exactly what you're going to get when you add James Harden to this mix. I'm not even close to there yet.
Yeah. I agree with everything you both said. I just want to acknowledge, I'm not saying Joel is at the level of Jokic as a passer so far. He is averaging almost 6 assists, career high for him this year, really doing a nice job baiting the double teams. Not the same player when it comes to passing. I'm not saying that. I just want to acknowledge Joel uptick in assists this year.
Disclaimer.
Always have a disclaimer. Always have a disclaimer. In the NBA, the game can change in an instant. But no matter how the action unfolds, you know DraftKings Sportsbook has your back. This week, new customers can score $150 instantly in bonus bets just for betting $5 on basketball. Win or lose, you get an instant dub. I'll be calling the San Antonio Golden State game on Friday night. Very excited to see Wemby versus Steph. That game comes right after the Miami Heat visit the New York Knicks in the Garden. Can't wait for that matchup as well. Both those teams playing excellent basketball as the Eastern Conference sorts itself out. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code JJ. New customers can get $150 instantly in bonus bets for betting just $5 on basketball. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code JJ. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In West Virginia, visit www.1800gambler.net. Please play responsibly. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, Kansas. Must be 21 or older in most eligible states, but age varies by jurisdiction. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details and state-specific responsible gaming resources. Eligibility and deposit restrictions apply. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. Terms at sportsbook.draftkings.com/basketball terms. Okay, y'all, let's talk water. I've been drinking Smart Water Alkaline for a while now, and it's been a total game changer. You guys know I'm a very active person. If you're like me, you're running, you're playing sports. For me, it's basketball, it's golf, whatever. Smart Water Alkaline was truly made to support active lifestyles. I literally don't leave home without it. Whether I'm calling games, on the golf course, or coaching the kids' practice, I always have Smart Water Alkaline on me. Smart Water Alkaline is premium, vapor-distilled bottled water with added electrolytes for a pure, crisp taste. I got some new golf clubs recently, so I've been hitting the range a lot, and low-key, my favorite part is the sleek bottle. It slips in and out of the bag super easily, and it just has a nice, sharp look. Smart Water Alkaline is the hydration choice for people looking to elevate in all areas of their lives. So again, whatever you do to stay active, be sure to grab yourself some Smart Water Alkaline and thank me later. Smart Water Alkaline is available at a store near you. I think the biggest thing that I will be watching, because again, 20 games, 25 games, whatever it is, that I will be watching over the next 15 games, assuming health, is just the rotations in the lineups and figuring out, like, how do we maximize the Westbrook minutes? How do we maximize the Harden minutes? Do we get Norman Powell on the court more with Harden so we have another shooter? Does James Harden actually take catch and shoot threes? I mean, every single one of those clips that went viral over those first 4 games, like, you should, maybe not the wiping the shoe clip, but every other one is like, you had a catch and shoot three. You know, just shoot the catch and shoot three. You shoot it at above 40% clip.
He needs the dribble rhythm.
But he shoots catch and shoot threes at like 42%.
You gotta adapt or die.
Yeah.
Right. You gotta adapt or die. And it's, you know, this, if you're in a space, and we've seen him go from a 35 a night and 7 assist guy to a 20 and 10, which is, we know that that's absurd. His level of greatness and the ability to change his game and still be great at a different, that basically means he could have been a 20 and 10 guy for the last 12 years of his career if he wanted to. So I just think for him, no different than Carmelo's had to change, no different than Russ had to change. We are now looking at a guy that's going, Chris Paul has had to change. Chris Paul's came off the bench for the first time in his 18, 19-year career. If you don't change, James, if you don't get in the gym and shoot 500 catch and shoot threes, then you're going to struggle in this as a person that could jump out of the gym for 12 years and then couldn't. And I didn't shoot over 40% till my 11th year. And then I shot over 40% like 5 times because that was the only way that I was going to stay in the league and do the things that I would like to do. So James has to make that adjustment. and T. Lue and how he manages these rotations and figures out, which I don't think there's many better. I think that's why we have to give him a long window.
On that note, do you think to some degree, I don't even necessarily mean this with respect to James and the perception of him over, let's say, the last 6 to 12 months as a basketball player. But do you think to some degree LeBron has sort of changed the standard of what we expect from players in their post 30? Like, I looked this stuff up, right?
Yeah.
The greats that played in the eight. I mean, Jordan was a little bit of an anomaly because he had insane years and won championships at 35, 36. But Isaiah Thomas retired at what, 32, 33? Larry with the back issues by 32, 33. He wasn't
Hakeem.
Larry Bird. Hakeem.
He played a little bit longer.
He played longer, but it wasn't the same.
He
Right,
got a contract.
Patrick had, he by 98, 99, he played 2 or 3 more years, but he wasn't the same
Seattle,
player.
I think.
Obviously, he had an Achilles injury. But I think to some degree, how we view players now, we're not taking into account as much the miles and the age. And I'll say this, not even just LeBron, like fucking Steph,
Right.
Kevin Durant. Like, these guys are in their mid-30s, still playing
Still
at like
averaging
a
30, both of
first-team
those guys.
All-NBA level.
Yeah, right. No, I think, for me, I think that's a great question, great point. And I would say up until maybe the last year or two, that's probably true because LeBron just kept doing it. We just kept going, my God, how is he going to continue to do this at this age? And maybe you are comparing other players. Now I think it's so ridiculous. Like, it's so absurd what LeBron is doing at this age. And there's not really any time frame we look at in the near future and say he's going to be out of the league and he's going to continue to put up dominant performances, dominant numbers. Now I kind of put LeBron in a totally different category. And I know I'm looking at James and saying this is realistic. Some of the things that he's lost, mainly being the number one thing, like he obliterated every one-on-one matchup in front of him. You were in his rearview mirror, or he was shooting a step back three over you, were fouling him. Period. Now, those guys, and there's a lot of guys in this league, like if you take away 5% of quickness or athletic ability off of some of these guys, you know what happens? 60 more guys can now guard you at a decent level, as opposed to those 6 in the league that had a decent chance before that by you just losing 5% of that crossover and then burst. Like, that crossover and the burst is not quite as good. Now I got a whole bunch of new guys that can come in and at least do a reasonable job on you. And it just, it makes you more like running in mud a little bit on certain nights. And I think it's realistic. So I don't even beat them up for that. That's to be expected.
But that's also why guys later in their career, Jordan wasn't bursting by people at the end of his career. What did he go to?
Low post turnaround
jumper.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. You go watch early Jordan. That doesn't mean he wasn't dunking. I don't want all the Jordan No, Jordan was still dunking. But where he started doing his most damage late, get me the ball on this block.
Even with the Bulls.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Post baseball.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The Bulls, that's where he was like, it was low scoring game. It was very deliberate. The possessions, the triangle, you couldn't double team as much because of the windows that they had and the talent that they had in the shooters. But Jordan wasn't doing the same scoring that he was late in his career. It was from a different position. Kobe was the number one ISO guy. He was nasty in the ISO. Late in his career, when he lost some of the burst because of the Achilles, because of this, it became more footwork, pump fake. It became more of a footwork game here. Every player loses that burst, and it's what you do after that that dictates how long you're going to stay in this career. James can pass. Now he needs to really start working on a spot-up shooting. If he works on a spot-up shooting and becomes good at that, he can still be an all-star for another 2 years, in my opinion.
You brought up the Jordan passing out of the double team. It's just a perfect segue.
Let me see your transition.
Do you have a podcast? It's a perfect segue.
Look, I'm going to say this. While you are helming this, I am definitely throwing you lobs. I'm throwing you lobs and helping you transition, man. Am I the James Harden of this podcast?
Set it right on that T form.
Yeah, just here you go. Here you go, JJ. He'll let you transition.
Look, we're recording this on Tuesday, November 14th. So this happened last week, but I want to bring it up because it comes up with LeBron 2 or 3 times a season where there's a late game situation and he makes a drive, he gets doubled, and he passes to an open shooter. And if the shot goes in, LeBron made the right play. If the shot doesn't go in, as it did last week with Cam Reddish, of course, Cam hit a big shot 2 nights later, then LeBron doesn't have the killer instinct. All the bullshit narratives come out. He's not Kobe. He's not Jordan. All that stuff. I want to get your thoughts on that. I do want to point out that in the 93 Bulls title run, Jordan passed to Paxson for a game winner when he was doubled. In the 97 title run, he passed to Steve Kerr when he was doubled on a game winner. 91, the closeout game against the Lakers, John Paxson, 8 for 8. Most of those wide open jump shots off of Jordan passes when he was doubled. I think it annoys me when LeBron, who has played the same way his whole career, made the right play 99% of the time his whole career, and then continues to make the right play, gets called out for some bullshit because a guy missed an open shot. He made the right play. What kind of shot do you want LeBron taking right there with 3 guys on him going off 1 foot?
Is he asking a rhetorical question? Let me jump in this and you can get it, Ted. Let me jump in this. One, there's two sides to this. There's the Jordan social media crew that love to pop their head out, right? And then there's then they start arguing with the LeBron social media. It's like, it's the right play.
Then the Kobe stands come in.
And the Kobe stand. Oh, this is what Kobe used to see. So now all of a sudden we're inundated with just opinions on, and it's like, this is one of those topics that always hits. When Bron doesn't do this, now you get it. Now every talk show is going to get to talk openly about LeBron versus Jordan versus Kobe and who's got the killer instinct.
This is not that show. We're not doing that right now.
We're not doing that. We're not doing that. So I'm just explaining, JJ, why when these moments happen, you get so riled up because you look at your phone and you turn on First Take and you turn on, Skip and Shannon and anybody within the talk show space. That is now the topic of conversation. It's that on NBA Today. It's there. And the 3 of us, not that we're always right, but we're going to sit here and be like, what the fuck? Guys, come on. He has a wide open shot. He threw the same pass to Kyle Korver in game 4. Kyle misses it. One of the greatest shooters of all time, probably the greatest shooting, 2-guard that I can think of during my era. And so when you look at just like a catch and shoot guy, JJ, I'm, just like roam around, catch and shoot. So Kyle Korver has a wide open look from the corner 3. He misses it. Bron makes a great pass. Kevin Durant comes down, shoots that pull-up 3, and now the whole thing is different. We're down 3-1. So that's who he's always been, and shit, I respect it. I play with Jason Kidd. I respect a player that's trying to get the best shot possible for our team. And I don't know, would you have made that shot?
Well, I don't get why we can't have a conversation where you just can't throw a dig. Just don't throw a dig at me. It's not necessary.
So necessary. I'm throwing a dig on a Tuesday afternoon.
It's fun, amazing too, because it's like he just kind of randomly pulled that out of his pocket. But it makes you think. Was he thinking about that on the?
I don't have a filter like that.
Okay,
Whatever I think about typically comes out of my mouth.
Okay.
What's funny is I have written down. I've envisioned certain scenarios happening on air during broadcasts, and I've written down things that I will say about a certain player or a certain team, but then have a dig ready to go for RJ. Now, those things haven't come up. They haven't popped up this year.
I listen to you guys.
But I mean, like when Dame hits that 3? When Dame hits the 3 with 30 seconds to go?
That was organic. And
I pick up on every one of these digs. It's fantastic.
Yeah. So again, to my point is that we're inundated with this conversation. None of us believe it's a real conversation. We understand the way he plays. He's always been a combination of Magic Johnson and Michael Jordan, where he's going to dominate you from a scoring space, but also he's going to get his entire team possible. You want to talk about a fucking system? Jokic might be the closest thing, but prior to Jokic, in my opinion, we'd never seen a system like LeBron. It didn't matter if it was Chris Bosh, if it was Kevin Love, if it was Anthony Davis. He could create the system and get everyone a shot and average 25 a night.
It's a Drunas.
This is divine intervention, by the way, because I don't recall ever, in all the years I've done this as an analyst, I don't recall ever criticizing a guy for making these kind of plays. It's it's the right basketball play, particularly if it ends up in the hands of a guy that can really shoot. With one example.
If you're going to say what?
And you just referenced it. And I'm glad you did, because I was trying to remember the game. The play he made to Korver. Yeah. That's the one time. I'll look at that replay with you 100 times. And here's why.
I'm not disagreeing with you. It was like, you still have thoughts about it.
That's a great shooter, no doubt, right? That's a great shooter. And
one of the greatest.
No doubt.
Top 5 ever in my book.
One of the greatest.
No doubt. We're all going to agree on that. And so, it's great decision. We expect to make that shot, a clean look for him. The only reason I say that's the one that bothered me, the only one that bothered me, LeBron had leverage where you were going to have to come through his body to get to him at the rim. It wasn't a situation like this play the other night. Kind of wrong foot, wrong direction. I don't know what exactly he was going to have to throw up to get a shot in that situation. Kicks it out to a shooter that's not on the level of a Kyle Korver, but it's a wide open, clean look. So I didn't have a problem with that, and I rarely do. If a guy's got a clean look and you got traffic in front of you, it's a good decision. That one, though, I remember that night on the air, like questioning that after the game, and I've referenced it a number of times over the years. It's been a while since I brought it up because I was trying to remember what game was that. It was right after that KD hit the walk-up three. Right after that very next trip, and I thought LeBron had the angle to get to the rim. And if you're a great player and you're built like LeBron James and you're going at the rim and you have the angle on a guy, you've got to go ahead and get that thing up on the glass. That's the way I interpreted that night. But for the most part, I do not question star players when they kick out to people that have open shots in that situation. You expect them to do their job and make the shot.
Well, and the other thing, you talk about Steve Kerr. There's a clip now in the timeout. Michael Jordan is like, yo, when they come double to me, be ready, be ready. So even in Michael Jordan's brain, he is mentally preparing himself to make the pass. He's preparing his teammate to catch the pass. So, like, that's what I don't understand when we, like, basketball minds or people that respect the game and study the game. You're like, Michael Jordan was, we've seen the Kobe, get out of my way, I got the ball. I get it. We've seen it with Michael Jordan. We've seen it with LeBron against Chicago. No, we're not drawing up that play in the postseason. He's in that corner. He pushes off, hits the game winner. We've seen LeBron do it. We've seen them do it all. But I also love to see the mindset of Michael Jordan in that timeout, telling Steve Kerr, hey, listen, if they come, be ready. And Steve is like, yeah, I'm going to be ready. I'm going to be ready. And you're just like, you watch this and you're like, this is a part of the game. The greatest of all time have won championships. Kobe in Game 7. Kobe in Game 7 against the Celtics. We know that was not one of Kobe's best games. But who was hitting the big shots? Ron Artest, Sasha Vujacic. I think
Powell, the big layup that he almost traveled on when he almost came all the way down.
Kobe was definitely the finals MVP. He was definitely the guy. But if you watch that Game 7 of Kobe's 5th championship, that Game 7, Kobe, he was almost having a James Harden type Game 7. All jokes aside, I'm just joking. But if you watch that, it was his teammates that made so many big plays late. And even Ron was like, Kobe never passed me the ball. Kobe passed me the ball. It was like he needed you to make a play, and you did.
I want to get the play right because I didn't really think of it until you said that about the timeout with Steve Kerr. The Paxson 3 against the Phoenix Suns, if I remember now correctly, he was doubled and hit someone in the paint.
Yeah, it was,
then hit
I think
Paxson.
It was Horace Grant.
It was Horace Grant.
Kicked it to the corner.
And who then kicked it to Paxson.
Kerr's was a 2, right?
Kerr's was a 2.
Like free throw line.
It was like a 12-foot jump shot.
Yeah.
17. We'll give him 17.
I know, I'm joking, obviously, but think about the spacing, like what we're talking about. So this shot to win the game on a catch and shoot came at like 15 feet.
Yeah.
And he had room.
Yeah.
He
didn't. He had it. He was exactly where he needed to be. Steve needed to be there. Oh, no, I'm with you.
I think we can all agree there's a lot of talent in the league. And this is not necessarily a legacy talk, but in some ways it is, because I think there's a difference between really talented guys who can make first team All-NBA, and all-time greats. And ultimately, I think the combination, it's not just MVPs to me, the combination of some level of playoff success where you can take a team to at least conference finals or finals as the best player, and some level of sustained excellence, longevity. I think longevity to me probably plays as much a part besides team success and individual success when we talk about all-time greats. How many all-time greats do you think potentially are in the game right now?
Well, 2 right off the top, right? I say already are.
Oh, let me say this. I should say that. LeBron and Steph, are already in the top 10, and I think Kevin Durant is arguably in the top 11 or 12, and easily top 15.
So do you want to go beyond those 3?
Yeah.
So here's, to me, to even entertain that question and start throwing names out, I feel like you got to have, to this point,
a criteria.
Obviously, the talent has to be there, right, on that level. And that's we can name those guys quick. But then I'm like, okay, there's got to be at least some level of like team success to this point, right? So you think that, this potentially could be a guy that leads teams to championships or multiple championships, because that's what it's going to take to get in the list of what we're talking about. I guess you start thinking about names like Jason Tatum, Luka, Giannis. would they be the three guys at the top of the list? Obviously, Jokic. Would they be the three guys, the guys at the top of the list? I mean, am I missing somebody? Because you want to start naming some of the really young guys that have this incredible talent, but really have had no taste of team success yet. That's a real leap. And even maybe people would say, well, man, how could you say, Tatum or whoever and put him in the category with these other guys? I don't know. Guy, it seems like he makes a perennial appearance right now in the Final Four of the NBA, right? He's a conference finalist like all the time. Elite level talent. He's the right age that if this turns and he wins multiple championships as the best player on the team and he's going to put up 25 to 30,000 points in his career if he stays healthy, okay, now you're in that category. I mean, so I think he would be a guy that I would say you at least can drop the name.
I would throw Embiid in there as certainly having a chance to be an all-time great. Already won an MVP, already won 2 scoring titles. I think for sure to get into that 15 to 20 range right now, where we're saying, that's the projection, then it's obviously the postseason success, getting to the conference finals or potentially winning a championship.
Okay, I'll be the Richard.
I love it.
I'll be the Richard.
I love it.
So Bob McAdoo won an MVP and wasn't one of the 50 greatest, right? Wasn't one of the 50 greatest. And this was in the 90s. So it was like there was less. So just because you win an MVP, say Joel Embiid, doesn't mean that you're an all-time great, right? Not yet. You can win an MVP. You're not an all-time great yet because you're talking about the length of the league. And if we're going to talk about an all-time great, that's like who has a chance to be a top 15, 20 player when they're done. I think there's a few guys that have a chance. There's a few guys, Jason Tatum being one of them. I think if we were to rank the people, in my opinion, that today, right now, if we were to rank, we know it's Steph and LeBron. We know that KD is right on the outside. So it's everybody else. I would put Jokic and Giannis like tied. I would put them tied. Because when you look at the MVPs, you look at the championships, I think when you start, yes, Giannis's numbers are through the roof, but I think Jokic is going to have, you add those assist numbers in there and those things start to get really weird where the exclusive company he is in. Does he have a chance to be the all-time triple-double leader? He has a chance at that. He definitely is most likely going to finish top 3 if he doesn't get injured. But outside of that, I don't see anyone right now. I would include Jason Tatum. I don't see that from Jason Tatum. I don't see.
How about Luka?
I don't see that from Luka yet. I don't even a guy like Kawhi that has 2 finals MVPs. I wouldn't put him in that all-time great. Now, if he were to lead the Clippers to another championship, boy, he moves up about 10 spots because that first championship, we know he was not the reason that they got to the finals. He was not he wasn't an all-star that year. He had an outstanding playoff and an outstanding finals.
He was not the clear number one.
He was not the clear number one, but he was one of those dudes. So that's a difference. In Toronto, clear number one. That was all him. It was one of the more impressive. But even then, if there's not a torn ACL and a torn Achilles on the other side, I'm going to say that they probably wouldn't have won that. That's just my opinion.
Unfortunately for him, all the time missed will hurt him because who knows what he could have accomplished in all that time. And now maybe we're already putting him kind of close to that. By the way, are you talking, to be more specific, are you talking top 10 ever?
Let's say top 20.
Are you saying top 20?
Well, no, I think it's interesting because the 2 guys that you brought up outside of Durant, who could potentially, by the way, win a third Finals MVP, win a third championship this year. Right. What does that do
Window still open for him?
Yeah. But I think the 2 guys are Jokic and Giannis, and they both have 2 MVPs. They both have a Finals MVP. They both have a championship. There's 6 players in NBA history. We talked about this week on Islands in the League. There's 6 players in NBA history who have won multiple MVPs, multiple Finals MVPs, and multiple championships. It's Larry Bird, Tim Duncan, Magic Johnson, LeBron, Kareem, MJ, right? All those guys are top 10 guys. They're top 10 guys. So Jokic and Giannis, to me, are the closest outside of Kevin Durant.
Think about, and look, you could right now, you could pull up probably 20 different lists of whoever's ranking these players, right? Who knows? ESPN did it a few years ago. So a lot of the same names in there, but not necessarily in the same order. But what you do see on most of these lists, when you start getting down to that 7, 8, 9, 10, look at the names we're talking about that are kind of occupy those spots that some of these guys would have to jump. If you look at lists, that's where you see a Kobe. That's where you see a Tim Duncan.
I've got the list.
That's where
right.
you see
I've
a
got
Shaq.
You're like, yo, is he going to
That's
pass?
what I'm
Right,
saying.
no.
Wait,
Yeah,
they have
yeah.
a chance. Like, yo,
Yeah.
Giannis and Embiid can definitely win 3 more. Giannis and Jokic can win 3 more
definitely.
championships in the course of their career. If they end with the same number as Shaq, there would be a legitimate argument there.
Yeah. They're the 2 names definitely that would have to be at the top list other than Steph and LeBron.
I got one thing to tell you really quickly.
Tell me.
The league needs one of those guys. We don't think about that from that perspective. Well, I love it when I say something and JJ's eyes get big. It's a few times that we probably get along. Where are you going with this? Want me to continue?
Finish your
So
thought.
this is what I would say, and we know this because we work for digital broadcasting companies. There's rating wise, LeBron, Steph, everyone else. And that doesn't mean that guys aren't in that, but it's like LeBron is clear above Steph. Then there's Steph. Steph is clear above everyone else. So when we having this conversation about who is the next guy, who is going to be the next guy that can carry and be an all-time great, that's pressure that I don't think a lot of people fully understand that.
I'm so glad you said this. Well, number one, we've got more to cover on this, but it does segue us into the next topic as well. You're so good.
I'm telling you, bro.
You're so good.
People just think that I'm just good looking.
I made this list earlier, but
I like
in
this
my
topic.
opinion, in my opinion, I think there's 11 guys that are top 10 players. Okay, and that's in no particular order: Jordan, LeBron, Kobe, Steph, Magic, Larry, Kareem, Wilt, Shaq, Tim Duncan, Bill Russell, in no particular order. Right after that, to me, is Kevin Durant and Hakeem Olajuwon. And then after that, you get into the Jerry West, Oscar Robertson, Moses Malone, Dr. J,
Isaiah.
Dirk, KG, Isaiah. Like, right. There's probably 10 other players that are sort of in that group. You could make an argument that Jokic and Giannis maybe already are in that group. Probably need a little more longevity, whatever. I think you both are spot on here, though, in that even with one more championship, even with one more finals MVP, who are you kicking out of that top 11?
No one.
Exactly.
Yeah, so we're going to have that conversation where
we're
they
actually
rank.
going to have to just do a new parameter. We're going to have to say the top 15 ever.
Yeah,
I'm serious.
It's like every year when the All-Star reserves are announced, and it's like, and you know, everybody wants you to say, well, who got snubbed? And say, you can't just answer it that way. You have to say,
Who
and
needs
then
to
this
come out?
dude shouldn't be there, right? So that's when you kind of go, okay, that gets a lot harder. It's the same thing with this. Like when you start looking at that list, you're going, okay, I hear you. Wow, like who are they going to leapfrog when you start getting to those last few guys in the top 10 that on most lists are there?
But that's why it's a bad idea to do U.S. versus international for the All-Star game. That's why it's a bad idea. I understand internationals are dominating, especially up top, right? When you talk about the top players. But to me, yes, that would make the game more exciting. That would be a better. But you're going to have guys that remember when Devin Booker and Dame Lillard were like alternates.
Yeah.
Like those guys were alternates. It's hard to make an all-star game. So now you're going to say there's going to be 5 players that might make the all-star game on the international side that wouldn't have made the all-star game on the U.S. side. So there are guys that on the U.S. side that wouldn't make the cut. And to me, you're going to have guys missing out on all-star games. And we know what that means for the new rules about player participation. We know what that means for, all NBA all-star. We know what that means for contract negotiations. So if you're trying to do that for a mid-season, it's not mid-season, but for a mid-season game that can affect players' contracts and shoe contracts and money for more like engagement in the all-star game, I worry about that.
We had 30 minutes with Commissioner Silver when
Royal We.
It's a company of several people that all work together.
Collaboration.
Nobody works for each other.
No, I love
so
the
whenever
Royal,
I talk about,
I love the
podcast,
Royal We. I love the Royal We that you include.
But we had 30 minutes with them, and we stretched it to 45. But I really wanted to get to the point you just brought up, the idea of a post-LeBron Steph NBA and how the league is strategizing around that. Because you and I have seen these numbers when we did our broadcasting thing. You go into the ratings of those guys. You go into a poll of 10,000 NBA fans. Who's your favorite player? And it's like, well, LeBron's at 18% and Steph is at 16% and the next person's at 3%. there's a big void whenever it happens, and hopefully it doesn't happen for a while, but there will be a big void when those guys either retire or have a significant drop-off. And obviously neither of those guys look like they're going to have a significant drop-off anytime soon, but that is a problem. And I think it's part of our job to help usher in the next era of whoever that may be. I do. I think it's part of our job.
But we don't choose that, man. That's the coolest thing to me about basketball players.
No.
What do you mean?
I know what you're saying. I disagree with you on that.
Okay, tell me about your disagreement before I even finish.
I know what you're saying.
Well,
we don't choose who's on national TV.
No,
Obviously, we don't. You and I don't choose
I
that.
know that.
We also don't get to do everything we would like to do in studio. That's a fact.
Okay,
it's a fact.
Can I finish my thought now?
I'm going to agree with what you're saying. That part of it, I'm going to agree with.
Okay. So as per my last email, the best basketball player on the planet transcends the game of basketball, right? That's why there's been so much hype about Victor. It's like you have to be able to transcend. Dr. J, he transcended the game. Magic Johnson, Larry Bird. You just say Bird and Magic, right? Transcend the game. MJ transcended the game, right? Like Shaq, Kobe transcended the game. You just say those names, MJ, we know that. So like LeBron and Steph, those guys are in that space. So the next one, it's like, oh, is it going to be the face of the league? Is this like, we're hoping so.
Right.
I'll tell you one other step, even from like how they're going to do this. When LeBron James moved to the Western Conference, it hurt a lot. It hurt ESPN a lot because he's your number one ratings guy.
Yeah.
And then
game's on at 10:30.
But his game was first. His game was first. So all of those ratings would pull to the second game.
Right, sure.
So
when he was in the East, yeah.
When he was East. So you could pair a bad Laker game. You could pair like another team, but your ratings were going to be on high because you were starting off with your number one guy. When you brought him to this conference, so what did they start doing? They started playing more nationally televised games for the Lakers. They save them when they're in the East. So then you get LeBron and the Lakers out East pulling those ratings. So to your point,
they moved up the TV time from 10:30 to 10.
They're adjusting. So you asked what Adam Silver is going to do, and this is the cool thing about being in these seats now. We start to see how many things are manufactured because that it's still a business. It's still an entertainment industry. So I don't know who is next.
No, we don't get. What I thought you were going to say is we don't get to choose.
No, we don't choose that.
Because ultimately, whoever transcends the sport next is someone who likely is going to display an insane talent, but also the team success in this is huge.
Yep.
Huge.
And when you think about ultimately what has built, I think over the last, let's say 8 years, LeBron and Steph to the degree they had was those 4 straight finals runs. And you look at the ratings of those finals runs, and I want to say they were the highest rated finals since the 90s, since the Jordan era, right? And everyone complained, well, why are we playing the regular season? And we know what the finals are going to be. And it's like, well, you're watching because you're watching greatness.
And I think there's another component, another word, right, that you left out right there when we talk about who the next guy is. You said talent, team success, like that's criteria. There's another component. And that's why for me, I think it's even going to be worse when Steph goes. The entertainment value. Because for me personally, and this is subjective, for me in my lifetime, he is the second most entertaining player in terms of must-see TV. Steph's playing, you got to watch Steph tonight. Because it's so eye-popping, like what he does and the way he plays, and it's so mind-blowing, that skill, that particular skill that he exhibits. It's Jordan and then him. In my lifetime, that's just me. You might have somebody different. So the entertainment,
the showmanship.
And it matters because some of the guys we're talking about, if you want to start making a list of who's those next guys would be, we can have a conversation. Are they as entertaining? Are you as super into it and excited about what you might see tonight? And so I think that's another component that both of those guys have, that when they leave, that void is going to be huge. And by the way, we assume Steph to, be playing longer than LeBron. But at this point, I don't even know anymore. I
think that's a very fair point. I think the showmanship piece, beyond just the talent, like the transcendent talent, yeah, that's great. Like Jokic is a transcendent talent.
Mm-hmm.
There's a showmanship to Steph. There's a showmanship to LeBron. I totally agree with you on the MJ point. Kobe had that for sure.
Yes.
But here's something, and this is not like, I don't think this is set in stone necessarily, because I think you and I, as people that live online, and I don't know how much time you spend online, but something that Rich Paul said there's no icons anymore. I think there are some guys that certainly have the verve or the flair, but every guy now is just so dissected, and it's like this in a micro way. Like we're just siloing off. Like I don't like Luka, or I don't like Donovan Mitchell, or whoever. I'm just Tatum, right? It's like, oh God, like if I see one more thing about fucking Tatum right now, it's like, just enjoy the fact that he's awesome.
He's a stud.
Right.
Just enjoy the fact that he's awesome.
But team success, right? They get dissected, and that's part of before. Now that we have 24-hour news, now that we have podcasts, now that we have sport, like there's a lot of content that needs to be fulfilled, right? The one thing I will say to the team success, it's like even go to other sports. Look at who Patrick Mahomes is right now. Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes because he's won 2 championships. Yes, is he the stud of all studs? But he ascended very quickly to the top of football, and everyone's like, this guy's a transcendent talent. He's the face, and let's be honest, he's Joe Namath. He will be the guy for the next 10 years. Tom Brady, they're lucky that Tom Brady left when this dude took over. Because if not, I don't think you don't get the casual fans. The Taylor Swift, she ain't in there. If Travis Kelce ain't in the Super Bowl, Taylor Swift ain't there hanging out with them. He might be white boy of the month, but he ain't hanging out with them, right? So that's what I'm saying. It's like all of this attention that's coming from Travis Kelce and Taylor, that's all Patrick Mahomes. That's Patrick Mahomes and the environment which he has created. That's not to say Kelsey's not a bad boy. That's not to say any of that. It's just be like, that's what happened. He elevated as Tom Brady kind of went away, and now you have the new face of the league. When was Messi at his biggest? Messi, the guy that we would look at as the greatest soccer. There's Ronaldo, there's Pele. Messi hit his peak after team success. Yeah. After he won the World Cup with Argentina, that's when his following went through the roof. That's when everything, it was like he was always Messi. He was always the greatest player, and he'd always won all of the other things in Europe, and he's done that. But once he won the World Cup, it was over. And so the team success is going to be big. That's why the guys that are kind of hinging, Giannis and Jokic, they need to win more. That's why the Jason Tatums and those guys actually have to win.
Luka has to win.
Luka has to win.
Yeah, right.
That's why I can sit back and enjoy Luka and just be like, he was an all-time, to me, Luka's talent was an all-time great the minute he stepped into the league. Because we were always just like, yo, this dude is a prodigy. Like the fact that he can do this, and it's never stopped. The last thing for him is to win. So I can sit back and say, well, he gets to determine by how much he wins, where he moves up on that list. Talent ain't the issue. If someone told you 2 years ago that Luka would go down as a top 7 player of all time, from what you just saw, the way he played the game, the way he could do things, you'd be like, oh, he's going to win 3 or 4 championships. He's going to win 2 or 3 MVPs. I could see that. We just haven't seen that come to fruition.
Maybe
yet.
Wemby becomes that.
They're praying.
Yeah.
They're praying.
I think another part of this in the post-LeBron Steph era is rivalries. And I think what helped build the 80s and the NBA in the 80s was Magic and Larry individually, of course, and Lakers Celtics as a team, right? And I think in the modern era, that Cavs Warriors thing, huge. Steph LeBron, huge. Are there any good rivalries? Are there any budding rivalries across the league? In this age of, it is the age of parity. We've now gone 5 straight years without a repeat champion.
It almost would be embarrassing to the rivalries you just mentioned to try to create them. We try to create them if like there's 2 teams that are good and a guy gets fouled hard on a breakaway. We try to create a rivalry, like on the spot,
they bring up
like
the
in
film
the moment.
6 months ago,
in
this
the
happened.
moment, it's getting chippy out there. You know, it's like no, it's really does them an injustice. These other rivalries you just mentioned, I've been saying about that for a long time, and it's rough for us in this industry because we would love to see it because it just brings so much more to your analysis. And when you sit down and watch a game, when that actually exists and it's not manufactured, we manufacture a lot of them. These little mini rivalries that only last, a couple of years or a few times they even play each other. They end up never playing each other in the finals a lot of times. They're regular season little rivalries, like Philly, Boston. Like it's a little bit better when those 2 teams face each other in the East in the regular season. Are we really going to go there with that? With lack of, neither team's won a championship, anytime recent memory. So to answer your question, they don't exist to that extent. And it does help with these kinds of questions when you talk about who is that guy going to be and who is going to be his arch rival? who's going to be the guy that's trying to take him down? We don't really have that right now beyond them.
Yeah, and it can't just be Jimmy Butler fucking dismantling everybody. Like Jimmy Butler and the Miami Heat don't get to be the he's not the Reggie Miller of this generation, right? What I'm saying is that Jimmy Butler is a stud. I love me some Jimmy and the way he plays and the way he goes about it. But to your point, there's no rivalries right now. But we didn't know in 2015 that we were about to get a rivalry with Golden State and the Cleveland Cavaliers. We didn't know that. But I even go back to, I'm okay with interconference. I think that's where we got to get a little bit more. Like in the 90s, it was Jordan versus the Knicks. It was Jordan versus Indiana. Like it was Jordan versus the Heat.
Like there necessarily have to be teams that meet in the finals.
Yeah.
Right.
Spurs and Mavs in the 2000s.
Spurs and Mavs, OKC. Like,
OKC.
Those
and San Antonio.
Lakers and Spurs. That was a rivalry. And it was like almost whoever was going to come out.
We need repeat matchups year to year in the playoffs. Because the Golden State Warriors thing from last year, this was last season because they had played in the previous season in the playoffs. That whole, every time they played in the regular season, that thing felt so contrived to me.
Yeah. You want to know why we might not get it either?
Why?
Player movement.
Right.
Player movement now. Guys aren't staying with one team 10, 15 years. You're not getting 4 playoff series versus that one team for 4 years. It's like Jordan having to get past the Pistons or the Celtics. You're not seeing that long stretch of player stability in there. You get guys moving. So now these teams might play against each other in multiple years with completely different rosters in 2 out of 3 years. So that's going to hurt a little bit. So I think the rivalries, you got to enjoy them now because they're going to be harder and harder to come by.
It'd be nice if we could get multiple years over the next, let's say 5, of conference semifinals or conference finals matchups of the Phoenix Suns and Dallas Mavericks with Devin Booker and Luka Doncic. Because those guys, I don't think generally don't like
each other. Right. Yeah. And that's the other thing we need. We need more of that. And that's again, we can manufacture it at times, but the genuine kind of animus, no, that's a good one because that actually exists there. And so you're right. That would be phenomenal if we can get that several years in a row.
And players are nice. The players all work out together. They're all AAU partners and they all, train. So it's like, after a series, instead of, you get Isaiah Thomas walking off, you have these guys hugging and, just being best friends. I'm just messing with
Magic,
you.
Magic and Larry were friends.
He's trying to get riled
Magic
up.
and Isaiah were friends. Alonzo and Patrick used to go out to dinner the night before playoff games.
Michael and Charles Barkley would go
Milwaukee
out.
and Boston have played a couple times in the playoffs in recent memory. And right now, I think most people think they're the top 2 teams in the East. I mean, Philly, I know, has got cut off to that great start, but most people expect to go into the year Milwaukee, Boston, right? Different level than everybody else. Don't you think? I feel like they could play the next 3 years in the playoffs, and it wouldn't get to the level we're talking about for some reason.
I don't know. Milwaukee, Boston, those teams are. I think for us, but I don't think it would bring in the casual.
Think anybody's getting laid out, and like really where you really got tired of seeing these dudes? Like that's what I'm talking about. Like the series we're talking about, you literally got to the point, game 4, game 5, game 6, like you're tired of looking at this dude in front of you. And I don't know that the personality types are like that on those 2 teams.
I agree.
What is the best possible matchup this season in the NBA Finals for what we're talking about?
Lakers, Celtics, Golden State, Celtics, Milwaukee, Lakers.
I wouldn't mind seeing Philly, Denver.
That's what I was going to say.
Philly, Denver. I would love Milwaukee, Denver. I think I want to see a big man that is as dominant as Jokic. And we kind of got some of that with Anthony Davis, but I think Jokic shows that he was in another class and another level. And Anthony Davis played great. Like that was the Anthony Davis that we hadn't seen probably consistently for a bit. But yeah,
there's a few that we need to see based on the principal characters that we haven't quite got to yet, like Denver, Milwaukee. You kind of need to see that, right? You want to see, and Denver, Philly, but Philly hasn't even gotten to the finals yet. But because of certain matchups, like it makes sense. We need to see those players on the biggest stage.
I'm gonna revert back to something we were talking about earlier. Clearly doesn't have the resume. Like I'm not, but a player we should have mentioned when we were talking about potential all-time greats, and I genuinely mean this, is Anthony Edwards, because I think the thing we're talking about right now in terms of the animus and the competitiveness, and that was a knock on him, truthfully, coming out, like that guy has it. He has it. He has the talent, but he's got it. Right. And you ask anybody around him, they're like, this guy's, maybe it's not this year, maybe it's not next year. This guy could be a top 5 player.
He's got a look in his eye that he hates to lose. And that stands out. That's what now has jumped to me when I watch him play. He clearly has the edge and the obsession with being great. So he has a chance because he's got all the ability in the world to do it. You can't do it unless you have that other component, like Giannis. Like that drives him. Don't want to just win MVPs and one championship. I want to be an all-time great player. I think Anthony Edwards has that now. That's a hell of a leap from where they are now, like in terms of their team, and who knows where he'll even be 5 years from now. Who will he be playing with? What organization? Will it be Minnesota, and with who? But I hear what you're saying. The combination of talent and the edge and the competitiveness, he has all that.
He's not allowed to be talked about until he wins a playoff series. He's not allowed.
What?
We're talking about all-time greats, and he
Oh
is.
no!
Oh, I thought you were talking about all.
No,
I'm saying,
no,
what I'm saying,
no.
what are you talking
I
about?
just said he's a long way off based on the resume, and then I had a slight chuckle.
I know,
because
but
I knew it was going to offend you.
Yeah, it's going to offend me.
So I did the preemptive chuckle.
I don't like your disclaimer, so you could just say whatever. You can't just say whatever you want after the disclaimer.
Can I say something? Please don't get offended.
Yeah, no offense, and here it comes. Right.
No, you cannot. No.
The other day, we were on the broadcast, and RJ goes, "Can I please say something?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, "RJ, we gave you a mic. You're allowed. Of course, you're allowed to say something."
He's saying this to all of America, and then tells me, "Hey, Rich, we should probably really be nicer to each other. People are starting to think that we don't like each other." It's like, what's the thing?
It's like another one of those is when you go to somebody. Listen, I don't mean to question you, but what I'm about to say is going to question everything you're about, every fiber in your body. The next thing I don't have. When you say, hey, "Listen, I don't mean to question," I'm just saying, like, it's another one of those examples.
Well,
of,
there's
hey,
three
no
married
disrespect.
men up here talking. We understand, like, much as we can transfer this into sports. Let's be very honest here.
True.
Let's be very honest.
All right, let's wrap up with one last topic. Commissioner Silver this week said that they are looking strongly at expansion. It's been rumored a lot about Seattle, Vegas. He mentioned Vancouver, Mexico City, even Montreal. We don't want to offend any cities, so we're not going to have that debate today. But I do want to ask you guys, are we realistically in a place where we can add 2 more teams to the talent pool and have those teams be competitive? And the reason I say, I believe that there are, I don't even want to say dozens, I would say 100 or 200 players across the world right now that could be on an NBA roster. Easy.
Oh yeah.
That's probably an underestimate of that number that could be on an
No, I agree
NBA
with that.
roster. Are there enough 1s and 2s where we can add 2 teams and dilute the talent pool at the top and have
a position or like stars?
No.
A's and B's?
A's
You know what
and
I'm
B's,
saying?
yeah.
I'm just
what I'm
clarifying.
saying.
Not everybody might understand at home.
Yeah, I don't mean the position.
okay, you said
I
ones
mean
and twos.
number
Okay.
1s and number 2s, like
Okay.
number 1 options, number 2 options.
I understood you. Listen, I mean no disrespect.
Thanks. We should always clarify to the audience.
Thank you.
Are we in a position to do that?
Asking me first. So I have pros and cons on this question. The pro would be why I'd be a proponent of it. I fought my ass off to get to the league. Okay, I had to go a different route. I got there. I spent a decade there. You just mentioned how many players are not on NBA rosters that are good enough to be there. So let's just say 2 more teams. Boom, there you go. There's 30 more jobs. Guys are in the league. I'm all about that, man. Get there, get paid, live out your dream, all that. From the perspective of what I do now for a living, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
That's cheating.
No, absolutely not.
I just had to
see.
go to a Wizards game on Sunday, and I can tell you, I'm a little iffy on this topic.
Well, JJ,
Hey, I was there too. You didn't want to say hi? See, that's the shit I'm talking about. See, that's the shit. I was there calling the game. He knew it. He didn't say hi. He didn't just throw a piece of candy at the back of my head and say what's up. He didn't. That's fine. That's cool.
He just wanted to let you, didn't want to bother you in your professional realm and while you were working. That's all I know. I know how JJ thinks.
Richard and I had talked about me stopping by the booth.
Yeah.
2 weeks ago. We brought it up with Frank, his producer, on Friday. Frank seemed very indifferent about the idea. So I just chalked it up to the guy doesn't want me on the broadcast. There was no follow-up.
No follow-up. We'll talk about that.
And I was up.
Yeah, I got you.
I wasn't close to you like I normally am.
Spend some of that money.
I was up.
From our job, yeah, that's harder. Like there is more stuff. Can I say this? I think the league can handle 4 new teams. 4 new teams. I do believe when you talk about there's 100 players, maybe 200 that are NBA caliber ready, right? I think, not saying that they need 4 teams now, but if they said we're going to expand 2 and then in 7 years we're going to look again, I would say that seems about right. And to me, because the game is growing. You got basketball, you got that Basketball Africa League. You see the international influx. And it's like, to me, when the international players really started coming over in the late 90s, early 2000, they were still trying to figure out how to play well in this league. And the guys that struggled and the areas in which they struggled, I think the European academies, the European teams, they were like, okay, well, these guys struggled, so we're going to better prepare the next crop of guys. And the next crop of guys are more prepared than they were when they first came over in the 90s. So I think European basketball is getting better and better and better. The players that are coming over, we've seen it in the postseason awards. We've seen it in the All-Star games. So that means that there's going to be more of them. Now you're adding Basketball Africa. That means there's going to be more of them. So I'm saying in 7, but I say in 10 years.
Okay,
in 10 years, there could be 4.
And that's the problem, the time frame for me.
Yeah,
I
the
guess.
time frame.
Because if you take that approach, I would agree with you because of the influx of talent, right? Coming from different places than we've ever seen it before.
Mm-hmm.
And now, look at the guys at the top of the league now, the household names. Look where they're coming from. So maybe let's go out and pluck some more, find some more. But who they're playing with and the guys that were taken in an expansion draft and how long that's going to take to get there. Yeah, maybe over a decade.
Yeah.
I guess for me, I hear the question and I'm thinking like, okay, next year, like I'm analyzing more teams that are not relevant by Christmas because we've got a lot
But
of
not
those.
everybody works as hard as you, Leg.
That's true. That is true. I'm glad you recognize that.
Not everybody does work as hard as you.
I think the timeline, if I'm not mistaken, 2 years to go before the TV deal. It would be 2 years before the next teams would start playing. So it would be 2027 at the earliest that we would add 2 teams. I think that's the timeline.
But can I say this?
You can.
Because I have a mic. If LeBron James is talking about owning a team in Vegas, does that mean that he has given us his timeline? Because you can't be a player and own a team. Once that team is gone, we know owners of a team. They don't like to give up stuff. Now they might give something. We see the Al Davis with Tom Brady. But everything that says to me is LeBron might start off as minority, but he wants to be the majority. So if that's his like, hey, I want to retire and own a team, those windows might not come up again for 10, 12 years. That's just the reality. So if he's got 2 years before they start doing that research for everything in Vegas, I wonder how much longer LeBron's going to be playing.
Interesting.
I'm wondering the timeline.
thought.
We know Bronny, we know Bryce, we know these timelines, but I'm also like, if the NBA is like, we're going to start the bidding at the end of 2026, right? If they're going to start the bidding at the end of 2025, then you're like, you got to be in that position to do it.
So I'm glad you're here. You're making a statement. LeBron's done. He's retiring.
You're a jerk
next year at the end of next season.
No, I'm merely just saying we've seen him jerk. You're a jerk for this. No, I'm merely saying this. You've seen him talk about it openly that he wants a team in Vegas and Vegas is it. Well, there's a timeline for when that's available. That's the only thing I'm saying. I don't talk to him. I'd ask him for a job. Tired of traveling all the way out here to New York.
Okay. All right. Well, I want to do one thing real quick because I know there's always an overreaction to comments, and I think you and I maybe weren't on the same page with the comment about 100 to 200 players across the league. What I just want to clarify, there are enough good players that could make an NBA roster. I'm not saying there are enough good players necessarily to field competitive teams. Just wanted to clarify that. And then you just doubled down.
Yeah, I doubled
down.
down.
Four teams.
Yeah, and then if anybody were to say anything, I'd be like, JJ started it. No, when I say 4 teams, I mean if they put a plan in and said in 2025 and then in 2040, we are going to look at expansion again. If they said another 10 years after that, we're going to look at it. I do believe that the game has grown so much globally and at a percentage rate that you could ideally, and especially with all the new rules about player movement and how much money you can play, everyone now gets dispersed talent more.
When you think about the timeline of the second apron kicking in 2025 and 2 new teams opening in 2027, the idea of the talent disbursement is probably a very real thing.
Right.
And it's an important point. All right, Tim and RJ, last question, the Rhoback question. Reminder to our viewers that you can use code OLD on Rhoback.com for 20% off your first purchase, RHOBACK.com, code OLD. You guys know I wear the gear all the time. This is actually basketball sneakers, a basketball, and a basketball hoop on this one. For both of you, the thing you miss the most about being a player and the thing you love the most about your current job.
I love the game of basketball. I love it. Like, I'm obsessed with it. So the fact that, like, what I was already doing with my buddies, what I was already doing in the locker room, what I was already doing when I was a kid, sitting in front of the television, watching NBC triple headers back to back to back, listening to Marv Albert, listening to Snapper Jones and Bill Walton, listening to these guys talk. And now and when my career's done, now I get to do that job. That shit, every day I wake up, when they pay me to sit courtside to watch a basketball game, and as soon as the game is over, I get to dip like I'm a fan. Oh, that to me, I am so blessed. That's why there's always a joy that you see when I'm either calling a game or talking about basketball, because I'm like, we shouldn't even be here. What the hell? That's my number one thing.
I'll go with, let me talk about the other one, that player perspective. They're kind of connected. First, I'll never be able to replicate that level of competition or the adrenaline rush from doing that. Right? There's just nothing I'll ever do in my life that's going to, hit a big shot in a big moment at packed stadium, like packed arena. You're never going to be able to replicate that in your life. And then I loved going on the road into a hostile environment with these other 11 dudes in uniform, and that feeling of us against the world, going out there and sending all these people home pissed off. Like that, right? Doing that with other guys that are like your brothers and your family, and going out there and competing, and you're the only people in there that want you to win, or the people in this room, and going into a hostile environment on the road and kicking somebody's ass and sending them home. There was no better feeling than that.
Okay. From a basketball standpoint, I think the thing that I miss most, and it transfers into life, it's hard being in the regular world and people not understanding how psychotic we are. Like, they don't understand. Like, we have to look at people all the time, and it's like, do you know, like, what I'm capable of? And not from but it's just like, no, you have to be psychotic to do this. Like, you've talked about your workouts during the summer. Like I grew up playing basketball in Phoenix, Arizona, outdoors, 6 hours a day by myself, just shooting hoops, dreaming about this. So I'm like, when people ask me questions, what do you miss? I'm like, I miss being around other people that understand my psychosis.
Yeah.
That understand it fully, of like, your family doesn't understand it. I tell you, my wife, like, when I first, I retired around September and started doing broadcasting, whatever, doing stuff. And it was like Monday came and she said, oh, so what are you going to do today? Thinking I'm retired. I was like, I'm going to go work out. Like, on the same schedule. She's like, still? And I'm like, yes. like this doesn't stop. Like, or else I will burn this whole fucking place down. Like, I need to be when you're an athlete, you're around like-minded people. Yeah. People that have always been driven to continue to be greater, to improve, to whatever it is. And amongst that is a brotherhood that I get you. When you're going through something at home and the basketball court is your refuge, I get you. When you're doing I get it. And we have that. We don't have that anymore. Like, it's all like, I get to hang out with this idiot, right? And it's like, you don't often get 10, 12 guys or a community of guys, even coaches, that understand what you are and who you are. That's the part that you can't replace. It's never coming back. And when you're walking through places in a very normal place, in a normal group of people, they don't understand the psychosis that it takes to do what you do, even on the broadcasting side. That's part of the reason why I like it, because I was like, I get to study, I get to do this, I get to research, I get to focus this psychosis on something. And if I don't have that, then I'm a problem. So that's the thing I miss about being able to have basketball as that outlet.
Yeah, I love the point you made. If you walk through those doors in a locker room, right, everybody in that room knows you just walked through that door and you got a uniform on. What the hell you're made of. Like, what you got going pumping through your veins is different. It's different for you to even be in this room. Mm-hmm. And there's an automatic respect that comes with that, because everybody had their own journey, their own path, but they all look kind of similar in a way. For broadcasting, for me, real quick, it's the most pleasure I take out of it now, and the skill level's off the charts, but it's watching a game, and now I want to go and I want to find that detail within the game that the average person that's watching the game never would have thought of, that mattered tonight in the outcome. And this is why it's important. And it's not like the last shot of the game that everybody's going to focus on the highlights. No, actually, it's this 3-minute stretch in the third quarter, to me, turned it. And here's why. And it's something that nobody would have ever really probably thought about in watching it. And then the reaction you get from people that are just fans watching the game, and they hear it. and getting that feedback from them, like, man, thank you. Like that explains something to me in a better way. That's what I try to do now. That keeps like the adrenaline pumping through my veins when I watch a game. I'm trying to find that moment, that thing in that game that you're gonna love listening to at home.
Can I ask you a question? Do you have multiple games going on, or do you watch one specifically?
I've always said this: if you're watching more than one game, you're not watching any games.
True. I watch all the games.
So I do too. Like, but what I try to do now, and ESPN was bad about this at one point. When I go back 10 years, there'd be 6 TVs in a room, and they're like, you're just watching them all, and then you're trying to figure out which one I want to talk about. Now, I narrow my focus going into the night, and a lot of stuff that I do. Like, look, this is the game. Unless it turns into a 25-point game in the first half, no one's going to be interested in this. Like, there's something really interesting in this game, no matter what, that I'm going to want to talk about, so I can really watch 48 minutes of basketball and pick up these moments that I'm talking about now. Because it is hard when, you got, sometimes I'll have a game on the TV. I'm home, game on TV, one on my phone, one on my iPad, one on my computer. They're all going at the same time, or multiple TVs plus all that. And you're not really picking up the nuances of what I'm talking about. Like the little things within the game that might have turned it or been a momentum shifter or like whatever. You might have missed that because you're looking at this game. And you look over and you got the score and it's like, okay, you try to put it together. It's harder, definitely, to watch multiple.
Fellas, always a pleasure.
Enjoyed it, man.
Enjoyed it.
Thanks for having
us.
Yeah. RJ,
Come on, man.